All right, welcome back, everyone. Another awesome episode, season 3. I am your host, Arjuna George, former fire chief turned podcaster, author, and coached fire service leaders across North America. So today we're going to talk everything CBD in the fire service. We are going to approach this through the mindset of the benefits of CBD and how that can support our wellness, thinking outside the box. And today I got a firefighter from South Florida who's going to join us, and he's also the founder of Rescue One CBD. I got Jon Vought.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
Welcome to the show, Jon.
Thank you so much, Chief. Really appreciate it. Really glad to be here.
Awesome. So tell our listener a little bit about Jon's journey through the fire service and what brought you to maybe CBD as a passion to share with the world.
I got started as an explorer at the department I now work for, and my mother's a captain in the Palm Beach County Fire Department in South Florida, and seeing her go to work and love it was a huge deal for me because, my dad on the other side was an electrician and worked big commercial job sites, construction, sites, and I worked with him for a little bit, and I could tell I think he liked the trade. He didn't like the job. On the contrast, I saw my mom going to work and all she had were stories, good, bad, and ugly, but all she had were stories. And she just loved telling stories from the job. And I thought that was so cool. So I had an opportunity to join the Explorer program. I did. And I fell in love with it. I was lucky enough to get hired on the same department that I was an Explorer for. And then ended up taking over that same Explorer program. I still lead it today. I got hired in 2009, so I've been on for, 16 years. I'm a captain now at our downtown truck company, and where I always wanted to be. I've always wanted to be on that truck. And so I'm just started this brand in 2020 after I had a really serious foot surgery where they rebuilt my foot, and my sleep was all jacked up after taking opiates long term. And I needed something that was going to help me with my sleep, that was safe for the job, and that also wasn't another medication. I was just trying to stay away from them, and discovered CBD, but couldn't find it safe for first responders. So here we are. 5 years later, we're still growing and trying to get the message out there. Feels like year by year.
That's awesome. Yeah, and my own personal journey kind of going through burnout. I used CBD in the early years of going through burnout in 2021 just to help me sleep. Exact same thing, because I know sleep is the foundation for our wellness. If we don't have good sleep, everything else is going to be a struggle. So I really found a huge benefit in CBD. I was off work, so I didn't have the concerns of testing or anything like that. But it was a game changer for me. It allowed me to finally sleep, rest, recover, recharge, and actually start working on myself to get out of burnout. Right. So, yeah, testament for myself. CBD is a powerful tool for sure.
That's really cool to hear. I think a lot of people, especially chiefs, are still very concerned about it. And even though cannabis is legal, it's still, tested for in the first responder community, obviously, or any, I guess I would assume any, public safety kind of position. I'm sure pilots are tested the same way. So it's just a matter of, everyone wants to get the benefits of it, but everybody's afraid of failing a drug test, rightly so.
Mhm. So back in 2020, when you're trying to get off the opioids you're on, did you find anything at that time, or is that why you invented Rescue One CBD?
I didn't find anything. And I had my surgery in 2018, January of 18. and I couldn't find anything. And 2018 in the United States, CBD became um, separate from marijuana. So hemp and marijuana used to be considered the same plant until 2018. They differentiated the two, and it opened up the CBD market because the cannabinoid CBD is extracted mostly from hemp, not so much from marijuana. And so now it became this basically nationwide compound. And I had everybody was talking to me about it. They're like, "Oh, you can go buy it anywhere now." And I'm like, "I don't I got to find something that's safe for the job." And I could not find anything. So, I mean, I ended up using a brand, but it it, it was like I was off work, same thing as you, Chief, and I was like, I don't want to maybe risk this while I'm at work. And because it worked, I was like, I have to figure out how to get this into the fire service. It took me a couple of years of trying to learn the industry. I worked for a CBD company doing like building their website and running some of like the e-commerce operations for them. Then I started my own, but it wasn't for firefighters. And I got to meet the scientists that extract CBD. I got to see the extraction process, the manufacturing process. I traveled, I toured places, several states throughout the country. And then I kept asking about, making it zero THC. And without getting too much into the weeds, nobody wanted to do it. And I learned it's possible, but nobody, it's just there's no market for it. Nobody wanted to. So once I finally found a group of guys that was able to do it, we started Rescue One, and we did it right. From that point, we had this brand that was specifically for first responders, and that's what we started in 2020.
So the whole THC CBD combination, most CBD products that I'm familiar with have a touch of THC in them, and that was really the part that you wanted to figure out was eliminating THC as much as possible. And I believe you're down to a very small amount, if any, and that was the real key to this product versus other products out there. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we have non-detectable amounts in our raw ingredient. So once we extract it, we have to test that. And there's a difference between non-detectable and non-quantifiable. Non-quantifiable means there's a small amount in there, but it's so tiny that the machine can't actually put a number on it. Um, the question comes up with that is, okay, if I take small amounts, even microscopic amounts over a long period of time, is it enough to cause a failed drug test? The truth is, we don't know. So instead of playing the guessing game, we take it out until it's non-detectable, meaning when we test our product after it's manufactured, if we see any peak of THC in there, then the product is no good. It has to be non-detectable amounts of THC. The machines test down to the most sensitive machines out there in forensics test down to the parts per billion range. So we need to have zero parts per billion or parts per 100 billion, I believe is the calibration, but it can see parts per billion, and we have zero. So if it's not truly zero in the isolate, we and that the number we always go for in the isolate is 0.000%. And so a lot of people say zero THC, and it's really misleading, or THC free, because the industry standard for those is 0.02% THC, because it's, still zero point 0.0, but it's not 0.000, so it's a tricky misnomer that they use, which is what we're trying to avoid.
So we're really going to dive into the power, and I'm going to say the power of CBD for our use of wellness. But before we jump into that, is there any benefit through your studies on THC for first responders? Like, is there any benefit in THC?
Absolutely. We shouldn't discard it so quickly, and I think that there's a big difference between CBD and THC. Um, the some things THC is better at, like pain relief. If I really wanted to get one of my guys or girls off of pain medicine and give them an alternative that was natural with virtually no side effects long term, that are comparable to pain relief drugs. Obviously, THC has some side effects. But compared to something addictive like an Oxycontin or something like that, I would absolutely give them THC, not CBD. CBD doesn't blunt pain reception. Uh, it reduces inflammation. And so, if you're asking somebody to get off pain medicine, THC is the king. Um, as far as sleep, THC is actually pretty bad for REM sleep. And it's really interesting because, when I first started this journey and I saw that THC was bad for REM sleep, I just said firefighters should never take THC for sleep because it's going to disrupt your sleep architecture. It's more complicated than that. There are instances, especially in people with advanced and very specific types of PTSD, where you want to suppress the amount of dreams that they're having. And so certain psychiatric schools of thought would be, hey, if you have a substance that can actually suppress and disrupt their REM, at least for a little bit while they're undergoing therapy, so we can work on some of those things so they're not having these nightmares, then they can process it a little better, and then we can let them get into that deep sleep. That is a theory. It's not something that is mainstream practice, and I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist, so I shouldn't say whether that's correct or not. But I bring that up because there's obviously studies that need to be done to get that answer. And so to immediately discard THC for sleep or not sleep or whatever, and to say, shouldn't be in it, it's a little bit premature. We just don't know enough about it. But I bring that one example up as as something to say, hey, could this be actually a good thing? Is it okay or normal to disrupt sleep architecture? It's way too complicated for a firefighter like me to try to say whether we should or should not. So, open the door and allow some of that research to be done, because obviously PTSD is very complex and it needs to be looked at a little more. Those are just two really short examples. I mean, you could dive into a lot of research on either of those things. But the most prominent thing we deal with mostly, Chief, is sleep and usually anxiety. A lot of people also with inflammation, those two things overlap. But so I just like to point out those two as the best examples.
I love that. I love that. So when we talk about CBD, you've talked about inflammation, you talked about sleep. What other benefits could the first responder listening right now go, maybe it's time for me to look into this a little deeper and see if this is the right thing for me or not?
Well, inflammation is a very interesting one because, um, you know, I'm speaking about things that there's a lot of research and data behind, and you know, the effect that CBD has on chronic inflammation is powerful, and the ability for it to reduce what's called reactive oxidative species or ROS, which is a normal process in the body. That's something that's happening all the time. It's just commonly called oxidation, right? There's oxidants and then there's antioxidants that balance it out. With us as first responders, we're usually, if you think about it as a scale of oxidation and antioxidation, it's supposed to be even. And when it's uneven and you have too much oxidation, that's just called chronic inflammation. So we're constantly in a state of chronic inflammation just because of our lifestyle. Waking up in the middle of the night when your heart rate jumps up, that boosts cortisol. That's an increase in oxidation. That's the stress hormone, the inflammatory hormone. Poor diet, um, a constant strain the day after, where you're like fighting to stay awake and things like that. You're pushing your body. Um, and we usually, if I were to bet, maybe after your rookie year, probably still okay. But after your rookie year, we're probably more often in a state of inflammation than not. And that has effects. Chronic inflammation is linked to every major disease process. They go hand in hand because it is a cascade. I mean, inflammation is by itself not bad. It needs to happen. And cortisol is not a bad hormone. It's just too much of anything is bad. Too much water will kill you. So it's a matter of that balance. The cool thing is CBD, the hormones, I'm sorry, the cannabinoids that are in your body that CBD, increases are just always there. They're natural. but the endocannabinoid system is pretty dormant and it helps balance out those things like inflammation. So from a very scientific point of view, that's way outside my scope again. Um, that's another one that it works in the same way that solumedrol does or prednisone, which is a corticosteroid. And taking a steroid daily would be horrible for you long term, if you took it for years. But they've researched CBD for very long periods of time, years on end, and there are no significant long-term health risks unless you're combining them with other medications, which is something we can talk about later. So, between that and sleep, it's big now. I'll speak not about my product, especially if the FDA is listening, but I will speak about CBD in general,
Yeah.
that every year more research comes out about the anti-cancer properties of CBD. And it's so specific. The reason it's interesting is because it's so specific. They find the pathway, how CBD affects things like your tumor necrosis factor, which is a really big, important thing in oncology for determining how you can fight off cancer cells. And then one just came out, I'm not even joking, like 2 weeks ago, about, some of these other cancer markers that CBD reduces or eliminates, and they're finding it, in multiple types of cancers. Um, and I think, there's always been a little bit of promise in it, but they're seeing them in humans and in animals now. So it's really distinct. When you think about all the other things that, you can do in your lifestyle that you can take daily that basically don't have any risk, but potentially have a huge upside. I think that's also another feather in that cap that CBD has. It's just hard because, people ask sometimes, hey, what does this stuff do? And I just stick to like inflammation, mood, and sleep. Because if you dive down the rabbit hole, it's this huge, world that of research that's opened up, and most of it needs more data behind it. So it's hard to say whether it can or cannot help those things. But I just stick to those three so I don't like overwhelm people. And so people, I mean, honestly, they'll think it's like snake oil, So I can't possibly do everything.
And those three are probably the top three that first responders are looking for, right? Is that
I
support
agree.
and yeah, 100%. So you touched on the endocannabinoid system. Can you just kind of, for the listener right now, what is that? Because that is a natural part of our human body. It's not an addition. It's so. Can you just kind of tell us the Cole's notes of what that is?
Yeah, in layman's terms, it's basically think of like how your nervous system touches every part of your body to feed it information. The endocannabinoid system touches almost every part of your body. It's largely broken up between your brain and your gut, although it is in several other places. But in your brain, it affects things like mood, sleep. In your gut, it affects things like your immune system and inflammation. It affects inflammation via your immune system, but those two things are broken up into two types of receptors, and it's CB1 and CB2.
Mm.
That's basically the Cliff's Notes version. The way that cannabinoids affect that is what they discovered, CBD with, and the endocannabinoid system wasn't even known to be in existence up until modern times. Um, it's something that we've largely starved because of cannabis prohibition, but the only ways to affect it are with um, you know taking cannabinoids. uh, it does happen to help with homeostasis, when it comes to things like digestion and sleep and all the stuff. It's a large, very, very large part of the human body. It's neglected. And once we see disruption in the endocannabinoid system, we see disruption in things like your circadian rhythm, and digestion, your immune system. It has a lot of second and third order effects. So it's a very large, extremely important part of the human body, and it functions off of cannabinoids that are naturally occurring in your body. They can be dialed up with things like CBD and THC.
Gotcha. So even if you're not taking CBD, your body is creating that, just maybe not to the level that would be the optimal for your health.
Correct.
Yeah, cool. So there's also Obviously, CBD is what we're talking about, but I'm familiar with CBN and CBG. What would be the differences between those three for the
These
listener?
are like, yeah, it's a great question. These are the most prominent ones, but there are over 100 documented cannabinoids. They're really difficult to come by because they occur at different stages in the life cycle of a hemp plant or a cannabis plant in general. So, like CBG is the mother cannabinoid. That's what they all start off as, and they slowly deteriorate or change into other cannabinoids from that. And so CBG is found very in little baby hemp plants, little tiny hemp plants. So you have to harvest the flower very early to get it. And then CBD is more late stage. Um, but what do they do? CBG isn't as studied as CBD or THC. It stands for cannabigerol, which sounds like a fake word, but it's real. And then it's primarily an upper. It's like used for focus and clarity. It gives a lot of an energizing effect. You know, in most people's teenage years during experimentation, they may have noticed that certain strains of marijuana would make you feel extremely tired. The strain indica is also called indicouch, because it's like you
Yeah.
just want to lay down and not do anything.
Yes.
That is very high THC content, very low CBD and CBG content. Conversely, there's the strain sativa, and they have like a million different names for the blends, but sativa has less THC. It has more CBD and CBG in it. And those strains, people say when they take them, they'll clean the whole house. Like they feel very energized. They wouldn't take them anywhere near bedtime because they would be energetic. That's usually CBG in there and sometimes small doses of CBD. They do have a wake promoting effect. Um, and then CBN is really interesting for sleep. They're discovering that CBN might be better for sleep than CBD, which is really cool. This is the really tricky part and why it's so important to trust the brands that you're buying from. CBN may cause a failed drug test. It metabolizes into the same when it breaks down, sorry, its end metabolites, like once it's done with its pathway in the body, might be the same metabolites as THC, which sucks because it's non-intoxicating. You're not taking marijuana, and it still can cause a failed drug test. And when I say we, the scientific community, not me, the scientific community isn't sure whether CBN is actually degrading into THC metabolites, or if it's just so damn close to THC that when you're extracting them, when you pull CBN, you actually get a little THC with it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell. Um, it's an interesting problem, and I hope they solve it one day because I would love to use CBN in our sleep products, but just can't stay away from it. But I dive into that one a little deeper because it's like people read about cannabinoids and they just assume THC is the bad one, and then there's so much information out there. It's hard to like swim through it all. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. So, what would be some of the contraindications for somebody to take CBD? Is there anything out there? Somebody that's like, this is not the right fit for me. Is there things that
There
we should
definitely
avoid?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, CBD is actually terrible for some people, and we've seen some of our customers report it to us where they said, "Hey, I just took CBD and I got the worst night of sleep in my life. What happened?" And they're taking it correctly and they're taking enough. Um, and it's just not good for them. And we'd walk through it with them like, are you taking it for at least a week? Are you leaving it under the tongue for 2 minutes? Are you taking more than 25 milligrams? And they'd all say yes, yes, yes. And I'm like, it's not good for you. That's pretty rare. You know, there is like a biphasic effect to CBD. It can cause a lot of like energetic feelings, and it's probably like people have a hard time sleeping on it. So one of the contraindications is if you have that effect, which the only way to know is to try it. The other one is certain medications. You have to tell your doctor you're taking CBD because it works on an enzyme in your liver that can increase strength of a lot of prescription meds. And just as a rule of thumb, if your doctor's ever told you don't eat grapefruit while you're on this medication, then you can't take CBD either because they have the same effect, which is an enzyme in your liver that is really specific to the digestion of medication. And CBD inhibits that. So like you could be taking the one they're really worried about, the two they're really worried about is blood thinners and chemo. So you take blood thinners and you take CBD, your blood thinner just got much stronger. Certain psychiatric meds are the same way, although those, from my understanding, are easier to dial in a little bit. So they could say like, we'll just reduce your psych meds or, or don't take CBD, one or the other. But it's really important to tell the doc that you are taking it. Other than that, I mean, if people have inefficient livers, they say worry about like if you're on dialysis or something, you probably shouldn't take CBD. For the same reason, it does have an effect on liver enzymes. But it's usually only bad for people who have, you know, inefficient livers. It doesn't. They've gone back and forth of whether it has any liver damage, and every time they think it does, they keep reversing that. So there's actually a lot of research on CBD in the liver. It's just a conversation you have to have with your doctor. Those are really the only ones. I mean, the side effects are 1% or less people take it and feel really tired when they take it. Some people love that because they want to just knock out.
Mm.
But it's considered by the FDA an untoward side effect. You don't want to be taking CBD during the day for like anxiety and then try to get behind a wheel and you can't keep your eyes open. So, you know, when you try it, you got to make sure that you see how it feels for you, not on shift.
Mm.
And same thing, less than 1% have some like digestive issues, but they don't know if it's the CBD or if it's like, because sometimes it's kept in MCT oil, and some people have a hard time with MCT oil. But
Mm.
yeah, those are the big ones.
So, in the whole world of the fire service and CBD, what is going well with drug testing, and where are some gaps that we need to work on to support firefighter wellness, but also still safeguard our employees, our first responders from narcotics that shouldn't be used?
This is a huge question, probably the most important question, and one I don't think that's addressed enough. I think what's going well is we Rescue One CBD is starting to, you know, publish, try to get published some of our research that we've done with the University of Arcadia and the University of Maryland testing our product on firefighters to show it doesn't cause failed drug tests. So we have a little over 40 people in the study, all firefighters, all active duty firefighters, all of them were involved in the test from 2024, all of 2024. I thought maybe even early 25. We've been sending up samples for about a year, and all 40 passed with flying colors. Absolutely no issues with drug testing. And this isn't just a dipstick; it's HPLC, so it's liquid chromatography. They test and they look at same thing, parts per billion. It's more stringent than the drug testing you would get at work. So we have no failed drug tests in those. And all of that is basically to say it's never been done before. Like, could we see people failing drug tests from CBD products that are made correctly? So we're trying to prove that you can take this and it is safe for the job. Other than that, we're really not doing much. And I don't just mean the fire service. I mean society, as far as cannabis testing. I think one reason is because nobody really cares, you know? It's like people have the presumption first responders shouldn't be taking it anyway, so why do we need to get better drug testing to tell if they are or are not intoxicated from marijuana? And then the other reason is that the vast majority of the country, and definitely in Canada, I would assume, doesn't need to pass drug tests. Nobody cares about cannabis anymore. It's not the boogeyman, and for the most part, modern society has progressed past that. We're just stuck in military and first responders.
Mhm.
So because of that, there is no breathalyzer. It's not like alcohol. You can't walk in and say, Jon Vought's intoxicated from cannabis. Here's his test. There is nothing like that. And until we get that, and until we get a level of intoxication, we're going to have this big issue and people are going to be afraid of CBD for passing drug tests, and employers are going to try to prohibit you from using cannabis because they can't tell whether you can or cannot do it on duty. Um, the third part of your question I thought was extremely important too. How do we protect people? How do we protect our people? Because my biggest gripe with our approach and and I guess stigma with cannabis in the fire service is that there's this giant hypocrisy and contradiction that most fire departments have with their prescription medication policy. Um, and I'll explain. Most departments allow you to use intoxicating substances and still be a on-shift line firefighter, not on light duty. The most common one and the most commonly prescribed one, besides Adderall, is a benzo. It's Xanax. So I could be prescribed Xanax for sleep or for anxiety or for stress, and I can be an on-shift firefighter. Well, if I look at my policy, I'm speaking for my department, but I know after polling a lot of people, it's similar. After speaking with my department, the explanation was, yeah, but you can't take that on shift. I said, I agree. Prove that I'm not. Because here's the thing. Benzos and cannabis have the exact same pharmacokinetics when it comes to drug testing. They both last 30 days in your urine. There is no level of intoxication to show when I have enough in my system to be intoxicated or sober. And there's no test to show if I took it recently or if I took it 30 days ago, and it'll last 30 days. So how is it that I'm allowed to use this substance that, by the way, is one of the most addictive substances ever created, a benzo, that if you stop taking it when you're addicted, it could literally kill you, be a line shift fireman, and I can't use cannabis that has medical benefits, that has been legalized in, more than one country, and that is roughly there's no LD50, so you can't overdose on it. It's just not possible. And it's it does have an addictive potential, right? But it's not addictive in its in its natural form.
You're addicted to
So
the benefits.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that is the one thing that I always try to champion when I speak with people regarding policy. How do we protect our people? Whenever we try to question, how do we get this done? How do we, they can say, okay, Jon, I agree with you. I think cannabis really isn't the boogeyman. And I think that there are potential benefits that we at least need to consider, if not allow. But how do we get it done? We just can't figure it out with drug testing. I go, you've been doing it since you've allowed benzos use. So stop acting like it's this it's like this Rubik's cube. Like this is as unknowable as the human soul. Like we're just never gonna figure it out. Like it's not that big of a deal. You've been doing it for years. You just didn't realize it. And I think I get a lot of head nodding when I bring that up, but it doesn't actually progress because at the end of the day, you still got to go to your city or your county or wherever you work for and say, I'd like to have our firefighters using cannabis now. And that's usually, not an easy conversation.
Oh, for sure.
Long
Well,
answer, but there was a lot to it.
yeah. I guess saying that for the decision makers that are listening right now, what would you say to them about introducing and making room, making guidelines for CBD use in the fire service? What would you say to that decision maker that's listening right now?
Don't reinvent the wheel. This has been done many times over. And go look at departments that have this program in place and evaluate, don't take my word for it, evaluate how the effect has been as a net result in any metric you want to look at. I take Pittsburgh because they've been doing the longest. Look at the start of their cannabis policy, which I want to say, shoot, I just talked to Sean about this. Sean O'Leary from Pittsburgh, local one. I want to say it's been more than 10 years. I want to say it was around 2014. It might have been earlier, but for a decade now, you can measure their sick time usage, their EAP usage, their disciplinary issues, and their motor vehicle accidents. All four things that policymakers are very concerned about, and rightly so, when they're basically introducing an intoxicating substance, because that's what it is, into their policy and saying, we're allowing our guys and girls to use this. They're worried, how is this going to affect discipline? Are workman's comp going to go up? So on all of those metrics, Pittsburgh has actually decreased in that time. And what's interesting is we can't say that cannabis caused that, right? That's just not scientific. But it didn't make it worse, and I think the fact that it's gotten better is great. And let's just assume that it's just coincidence.
Right.
At least you can say it didn't get worse, because that's what we have to worry about, the problem getting worse. But as far as a policy, take what they have done, and they made theirs. I would say that the two routes you have to decide is this going to be if you're in a union or you manage a union, is this going to be a union policy, a union contract clause, or is this going to be an MOU between you and the city? In the case of Pittsburgh, they made an MOU, and they did that very specifically because the city said, I want it to be revocable at any time. And that gave the city confidence. And it put firefighters on the line, saying, I'm putting my reputation on this, and we're going to be on our best behavior, because if some guy shows up high to work and crashes a fire truck, pulling it, and it basically puts everybody on notice. Like, you better not screw this up for the rest of us. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that's right for everybody. Maybe, you have to look at your individual department, but when I spoke with, my friends at the Pittsburgh Fire Department, when they had mentioned, how they went about it, I think that was one of the procedures for execution that gave the city confidence in that. So everybody's worried about being the first, but that's long gone.
Right.
It's easier.
Right. So saying that, just for my own thought, can you actually take CBD in the morning and actually go to work and function perfectly fine? Or is this something you do like after hours, coming in with the remnants of it in your system?
You can do both. So they recently, West Virginia University in the US did a study about CBD's use and driving a motor vehicle. And they did a follow-up study just to reaffirm it, because I don't think they had enough data on the first one. I'm still waiting to see if the second one published, but they basically evaluated and said there is no level of inhibition when operating heavy machinery. So that's usually a definitive of whether you can take something during the day or not, is, can you operate heavy machinery? Can you operate a motor vehicle? Are your reaction times fast enough? You can take CBD and function during the day, as per, those studies recently. But, taking it at night, I want people to know it's not supposed to make you knock out and feel tired. A lot of people say it helps them fall asleep fast, but all it's really doing is affecting that serotonin hormone. So when our brain starts to spin up at night and just reel, just reducing anxiety and letting your natural feelings of tiredness kind of take over and you fall asleep is really all it is. What CBD does is just help your sleep architecture. So taking it at night is fine. You don't wake up groggy because it's not a sedative. So you can take it and be up, for work the next morning very easily. You could also take it during the day for mood, and it doesn't slow your reaction time. The caveat is, like I said before, if you're one of those less than 1%, that feels really tired during the day. But that's where you have to test for, when you try it out the first time.
Yeah. So I'm just curious about CBD and the usage. Is this something that you would like use as needed, or are the best results like on a regular routine basis of usage for best results? Or is it like, I'm feeling a little anxious today, I'm going to take some of this, or I'm having a bad time sleeping and I'm going to take some CBD? Or is it something you do on a routine basis, like a supplement, like a vitamin?
I think it depends on what you're taking it for. So a lot of people just take it for sleep. And when you're taking it for sleep, the cool thing about it is, once your sleep is regulated again, you can probably come off of it for as long as your sleep stays good. Because we have to understand how it works. It regulates the hormones. I'm sorry. It regulates the chemical transmitters in your brain that set the master clock. So very cool study um, that came out, and they were actually looking at Alzheimer's, and they found CBD with Alzheimer's use, and they found that um, in Alzheimer's and I believe also Parkinson's, huge sleep issues between those two. They found that the master clock in your brain that sets when it's sleep and wake cycles are set by cannabinoids, particularly the one that CBD increases. So when you're sleep deprived, that chemical is at an all-time low, and when you're in a well-slept state, that cannabinoid is at an all-time high. So uh, you set that clock again, and everything's balanced, and it's like setting a little wind-up car. You wind it up and just let it go. It's going to go for a while. You don't have to consistently correct those; they're already corrected, which is pretty cool. So you can do that, and then if as long as you're not getting really bad sleep at work consistently, which a lot of us are, it'll stay fine. But um, you'll know because CBD has a really significant impact on your dreams. And I'll tell people, I'm like, you'll know if it's sleeping, not just from the quality of your sleep and the longevity of your sleep, but most of us probably don't dream as much or dream at all. And the dreams really like spike up. They're very vivid, descriptive. It's noticeable. So if you're dreaming normally, you're good to go. And if you're not, and your sleep quality sucks again, and you're not sleeping as well for as long, you can get back on it. It's fat soluble, so it sticks around for a little while. But if you're taking it like, for anxiety, and it's a specific thing, hey, I'm going to go to this party later. I have a lot of social anxiety. I'm going to, just take a dose of CBD before I go. Yeah, you take it once,
Right.
it's very
Yeah.
different indications.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So is there a question that I have not asked you that you wish I asked you about CBD, about first responders using this product to increase their wellness?
No, I think, like if you would have asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have said, yeah, uh, ask me if it's weed or not, because everybody still thinks it's weed.
Yeah.
And that I'm very proud to say people have become a lot more educated,
Mhm.
and people are really, I guess, I guess, you know, they're more understanding of what it is and what it's supposed to do. So, it's kind of cool that a few years ago, a lot of people would say, "What is CBD?" I think I've heard of it before. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it does.
Mhm.
And then now they're like, "Yeah, I know what CBD is. Are you sure you can take this and pass a drug test?" So I really just focus on the latter, like the drug testing side of it, which I think we've done really well. And because the stigma is still there in a sense, but it's not a stigma in a way that like nobody knows it's a stigma. It's a stigma in a sense that it's there and people are aware that the stigma is present, which I think is like in the middle phase where it's going to start going away. When we're in that denial where they're like, nah, I don't know, it's not a stigma. It's just not supposed to be like this kid. There's a there's a there's a problem, and I think that's not the case anymore, which is pretty cool.
Kind of like how we're seeing mental health talked about, right? It's
Exactly.
still a stigma, but we're making progress to make it less and less. Before it was just ignored, right? So,
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
yeah.
The leadership for both of these things is important for mental health and for,
Mhm.
um, I guess you could just say cannabis in general. Um, when I'll answer that question again though, and I'll say, I think one thing you should ask, and it's for policymakers, is when cannabis comes to your door, when it's imposed on you, are you ready for policy? Because this is the stuff I pay attention to. And Chief, I see it every year. There's some city or some state. It's happened 4 or 5 times in the United States where the entire state goes to you know uh the press and just says effective immediately drug testing for marijuana is illegal because it's technically under discrimination. You have this entire population where cannabis is legal in our state, and you're telling this one subclass because of who you are, you're not allowed to do this. And that's not right. Now, New Jersey put up the biggest fight when they said, I know what you're saying. Mr. District or U.S. Attorney General for my state, but I can't test for this. And the reply is, that's not my problem. You know, your lack of technology does not take away the rights of a human. So because you can't test for it's tough stuff. Like these guys and girls are allowed to take it by the letter of the law. And if you don't have the technology for it, it's time to go get to work. But that doesn't mean that, you know, they have these rights and you're discriminating against them. So you know, I understand the position you're in, but the collective bargaining agreement doesn't matter. That's really tough. Imagine, you know, imagine your city or even higher, a governor comes to you and says, Chief, effective immediate. This happened with FDNY and it threw the whole department into a frenzy. You know, uh it was the state department of law enforcement came to them and said, effective immediately, THC testing's illegal, like that morning. And then there was a notice that night. Wouldn't it have been nicer if like a month before they said, hey, this is going to happen. Why don't you start getting your policies in place? Starting October 1, THC testing is going to be illegal. Great. Yeah, let's figure out how we're going to do this. Let's come together. All the chiefs can meet. They can meet with city officials. No. Imagine Monday morning you come into work and you get the district attorney frisbeeing a policy at you going, hey, here's the headache of the day. I mean, that's crazy.
Clear
So
my
I always
calendar.
ask. Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy.
Yep.
So I'm always like, hey, this is very possible. Stop thinking that like I hear this all the time. Won't happen in my city. I'm like,
Mhm.
I agree. Your mayor may not like it, but what happens if the governor comes in and says, I don't care what your mayor says?
Mhm.
That's the part I'm worried about. And then everyone is starting to pull their head out of the sand and go, oh crap, what do we do now? You know, so
Mhm.
I always put that out there, like just in case, start thinking about it. Would you be able to get this done
Good
if
point.
it was put on your desk in a day?
Yep. So I guess to be like the other side, does your gut have any concerns about cannabis CBD being banned again?
Um, I'm always concerned about it
Mhm.
because, you know, as a business owner, I have to think about threats and I have to get paranoid about certain things. And yes, like obviously the same way that it was allowed to be legal, it can be illegal. Then it happened in the UK. The UK basically just waved a wand and said, you know what, CBD is all illegal until you're FDA approved. They could do that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Is it likely to happen? Paying attention to the politics, I think it's bipartisan, and there have been a lot of CBD versus um, Delta 8 talks, which, you know, I don't have to bore us with those things, but, you know, it's a synthetic cannabinoid from hemp and caused a lot of controversy in the United States. They talked about outright banning CBD and it was shot down immediately by both parties.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think in the US it's pretty safe, but
Yep.
yeah, it's always possible, but
Yep.
not in the near future.
So Jon, how can people hear more about you? How can they connect with you? How can they purchase your products? How can they learn more about CBD and kind of the power of it for smarter wellness?
My website, Rescue One CBD, it's the number one. But if you do type in ONE, it'll still redirect. So
Got right
Rescue One
ahead.
CBD, if you Google it or if you find us on Instagram at Rescue One CBD, those are our most active channels. And we do, you know, we're on all the social media channels, TikTok and X, um, LinkedIn. But you know, if you just have a question or just want to talk shop, you know, my email, Jon at rescue1cbd.com. I love answering questions. I love talking. I'd be happy to connect with anybody on anything you need help with. And we have a YouTube and a podcast on Spotify where I just interview people. Sometimes we just talk just about you know, CBD research topics. So some of the stuff I say, like it's like too heavy for people. And I try to be good about that because I nerd out on this stuff because I really enjoy it. But it's pretty boring.
Yep.
But if you hear it and you're like, that sounds really interesting, we can go in a lot deeper and
Cool.
I kind of touch on those on there.
Awesome. Awesome. So Jon, final message to our listener right now about well, any message you want to share with our listener right now. What would that be?
Just one, just thank you. I mean, I had no idea 5 years ago it was going to grow into this
Mm.
and we're just floored at some of the things that people have shared with us, you know, as far as how it helps them. And I want to keep doing that, but I can't unless people trust us. And so everybody that does and that has for the years that they have, I'm eternally grateful. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your nerdiness around cannabis.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this great episode all about CBD, how it can impact our first responders to live a healthier life. And the message of being proactive about cannabis coming into your organization now in the future. Who knows, right? But better be prepared than to be having to clear your calendar to find a policy in a heartbeat. So hopefully this gave you a lot of value and kind of gave you some lessons around what CBD can do for us. So until next time, stay well. All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.